I think that the NHL and all of its feeder leagues, they need to do less wearing of rainbows on the outside and more self-examination on the inside. And look, and just like dial down the toxic masculinity, like way, way down, y'all. So I'm Sylvia, and I am 47 years old. I am a middle-aged bisexual lady, and I have been married to my spouse for a really long time. I can't remember, it's 20-something years. Don't tell them that I didn't remember. 1997, so somebody can do some math for me. I love hockey, and I am very, very tired of a lot of aspects of hockey culture. And I am repping the Seattle Kraken today because I really like what they seem to be doing in setting up their team, like some of the folks they've hired for their social media and their front office and so on. And maybe I'll visit Seattle sometime. I don't know. Maybe in Seattle, I'll be able to afford tickets to an NHL game. I have no idea. Yeah, I'm a writer and a marketing person, and I work in the scholarly publishing industry. I have an almost 19-year-old daughter who is not interested in hockey at all. And my spouse is a big hockey fan, and he also plays goalie for ball hockey in ball hockey rec leagues. Cool. He's slowing down a little bit. He's just turned 52 and he hasn't played in a while because of COVID. Mm-hmm. But like, I feel, sort of a kinship with goalies everywhere because of having goalie pads and goalie masks hanging up around my house, drying out after games.
How did you get into hockey?
Well, I grew up in Calgary in the 80s during the Battle of Alberta, so it was real hard to avoid it, actually. I got more into it as an adult because I married this jock guy who loved all these sports. And so we didn't go to hockey games because we're not millionaires, but we went to Blue Jays games and we went to see the Raptors and we watched hockey. I remember watching Canada play, I want to say Sweden, but I can't remember, at the Lillehammer Olympics in a really ratty student off-campus housing basement in Waterloo. Nice. I originally, when I started watching hockey, it was mostly Olympic hockey because there's less fighting and it's a bigger rink and, it's just sort of more, there's still checking, but it doesn't feel as slammy.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it's fast moving and I understand the rules and, it's just sort of, I like to skate. I can't skate on hockey skates, but, I like the cold and the fast and the hugs and the way that people really build community around hockey. And I also, I like how I work with a lot of Americans and sometimes I just like talking about hockey and watching them look mystified. And then I get to explain what this sport is all about.
I love that because you basically answered my next question is what you love about it. So we already got through that, which is brilliant. How could hockey be better for you as an individual and also for the queer community?
And I'm talking specifically about men's hockey here because, I think women's hockey is well queered up and super friendly. And I love that about it and for it. I think that the NHL and all of its feeder leagues, they need to do less wearing of rainbows on the outside and more self-examination on the inside. And look, and just dial down the toxic masculinity, way, way down, y'all. I'm a choral singer. I've been a choral singer since I was 9 years old. I know how important it is when you're doing something in a team, in a group, in an ensemble to blend to work together, all of that stuff. But there are limits. There have to be. So in choir, we talk about using your choir voice versus your solo voice. Your solo voice is when you want to stand out, whether you're singing a solo or like just that's what the music calls for. And I feel like hockey needs to allow people to use their solo voice more. And also like slap them down a bit when their solo voice is like, hi, I'm going to sexually assault people. Or, you know, I'm going to spew racist epithets, or I'm going to call people nasty homophobic names, like all of that stuff. I don't like the conformity of the culture, but I also don't like the specifics of the culture that people are being asked to conform to. And I know, like, I cannot imagine that there are not queer guys in that league.
There are.
It's totally impossible. Like, I believe you when you say there are, because you're in a position to know, but also even if you didn't say that, I would be like, there is no possible way that those folks do not exist. And I wish for them that they could do the thing they love and also be the person that they are and not get shit for it. Sorry, can I swear?
Oh yeah, say whatever you want.
Okay, awesome. I'm a swear.
Same.
And not get shit for it. And just that, you know, we could, like, I've seen some of your work and some of your talks about like starting at the bottom and also the top simultaneously. And I think that's really, really important. I do diversity and inclusion and equity work sort of on a volunteer basis in my field and also in my congregation. And one of the things is just, it's got to come from the bottom. It's got to come from the people who are doing the work. It's got to come from us in the community, but it also has to be embraced by the folks up at the top. Like if you're, like, you can have lots of, you know, line managers and like individual contributors in your company that are super queer and queer positive. But if your CEO is like, you know, I'm not even going to name names, but like if your CEO is
the guy
like,
from Chick-fil-A.
Thank you. Yes, I don't know his name. I don't want to know his name. The Chick-fil-A guy. If your CEO is like the Chick-fil-A guy, and I'm just going to note that like until it started being in the news for being horribly homophobic, I legit thought it was pronounced Chick-fil-A. So it's my little moment of vulnerability for the day. If your CEO is that guy, then first of all, those employees are not going to stay unless they have no other choice. And so you're going to have endless churn. And second of all, nobody is going to believe anything you say, and they shouldn't. And so it does need to come from both ends. And like, I feel so, I mean, I think the junior hockey system where you send kids away to live with billets and like half of them never get any education past high school is I don't like that to begin with. But also this thing where like all of your friends are your team and you don't meet any other people and you don't hang with any other people and you're desperate to fit in and you're just like crushing yourself into this
you're
little
16 hanging out with 20-year-olds.
And also like is not being 16 bad enough?
And then influencing your peers from the culture because now you're the big deal and you're kind of a celebrity.
Yeah.
So now you're influencing other kids your age and then younger kids. Yeah. And then some of your peers that you grew up with also went on to play junior elsewhere. And now they're all bringing that culture back to their friends.
Yeah.
And then it trickles into mainstream society.
Yeah, it's bad. It's really bad. And I have to say that like some of the worst stuff that I see, I am unfortunately extremely online and I should stop that, but what can I do? I work in marketing, so I have to be on social media. Some of the worst stuff I've seen is from hockey fans. And like, I don't want to be in an arena with you people. Mm-hmm. I feel like you're going to throw a beer on me just for existing. And yet, on the other hand, like I went to a couple of years ago, my spouse and our daughter and I were visiting my parents in Calgary. And we were like, we should go to a hockey game. Well, the Flames game didn't have any tickets we could afford. So we went to the Hitman. And all around us, for whatever reason, there were like rainbow people. And we were like, hey, we're at a hockey game. And we're like, there are queer couples sitting right near us. This is so awesome. Like, what a way to spend New Year's Day afternoon.
Yeah, that's really nice.
But it was telling to me that surprised me so much, because almost everywhere else I go, you know, I mean, I'm of an age where when I was growing up, we just kind of didn't talk about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I moved away from Alberta, and all of a sudden I moved away from Alberta, and a bunch of my choir friends moved away from Alberta to places like Ontario and BC. And I think you know where I'm going with this. All of a sudden, I had so many gay friends that I didn't know were gay friends. And I didn't figure myself out until much later, because I got to tell you, in the early 90s, we got really good sex education as long as you were only having sex with people of a different gender from you, and B, your main concern was like, let's not get an STI or get pregnant. We could have used some more stuff on relationships, but also like, I'm somewhere on the ace spectrum, and I kind of didn't really like, what is this whole sex thing about? I didn't figure that out until much later. But I literally did not know that bisexual was a thing you could be. And then I look back on myself and I'm like, I watched a lot of Kenneth Branagh movies a lot of times in high school. You know who else is in those movies? Emma Thompson is in those movies. And they are both very pretty people.
Yes.
And you know, like a lot of things. I really so I am that age, but I also have a child who was born in 2002. And so I have experience as a parent who got questions like, Mommy, when two girls get married, did they both have to wear a dress? The answer to that is no, they can wear whatever they want because it's their wedding.
I love Zoomers. But
like, yeah, it's my kid and her friends are so great in this way. Like, you know, she told me, oh, you know, so-and-so is using they, them pronouns now.
Some ways they are the most least traditional, but in other ways they're the most traditional. They're fascinating. Yeah. Z is a fascinating you know, group.
Yes.
What keeps you in hockey?
Well, a lot of it is friends, because I have like, you know, I have the Hockey Feels Twitter chat, and I also I'm a fandom person, not in hockey so much, but I'm sure you've heard of the phenomenon of the Check Please webcomic, which is about a gay, very queer hockey team. Yes. So I have a whole like Twitter chat that's based around that fandom. And, you know, we write things and we read things and we draw things. I don't draw things. People who can art draw things. And that again, like that's an imagining of what a hockey culture could be like that wasn't, you know, horrifically homophobic and transphobic and patriarchal and gross.
Yeah.
And toxic. And so I have hockey friends, and I have friends whose kids play hockey, and I have, you know, I like to watch hockey games with my spouse, you know, and like yell at the Leafs.
I feel like I need to read this fandom stuff and like the queer fan fiction type stuff. Like I feel like it's my lived experience and I should read it.
I mean, I don't honestly, like there's a lot of variety, and some of it probably is your lived experience, and some of it is probably really, you know, a utopian version of that, because like if you're writing your own fan fiction, why, like some of us use it to explore bad experiences, and some of us use it to create utopian experiences. And the great thing about fandom writing is that you can do all of those things.
Yeah.
And like you can do like 16 different envisionings of the same scenario, which as a writer is like I could never do that in commercial writing because it's too weird. Mm-hmm. And some people would think it was boring, but in fandom we're like, yes, I do want to read once again another version of that fic where they're on a roadie and they're roommates and there's only one bed and they have to deal with it.
Or share a bed, like that's,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
What gives you hope for queer people in the sport?
Well, you do, and Curtis Gabriel does.
Thank you.
And, you know, all of those couples in women's hockey, and,
they're awesome.
You know, tiny chulette babies, like all of that stuff. And all of my, not all of my hockey friends are, you know, hockey fandom friends are queer, but a lot of us are. And, you know, all of those people who are fighting against the nasty stuff, and instead of just giving up and saying this sport sucks, I'm not watching it anymore, they are saying, I love this sport, but I hate these specific things and you need to change these specific things. And you know, as I was saying before, the hiring and the campaigns that the New Seattle team has done, like this. So this T-shirt is actually was to fundraise for programs for Black youth in Seattle, right after oh God, there have been so many. Floyd. Yeah. So there's programs like that happening, and Black Girl Hockey Club, like all of that kind of stuff. That's like, we could just rage quit, but then only the horrible people would be left. So we're not going to rage quit, but we're going to be really, really mad about the things that make us want to rage quit, and we're going to try and change those things so that this can be a more welcoming atmosphere, a more welcoming environment, not just for the fans, but also for the players. Because I think about my friends in high school who were living in some cases, like places like, you know, Stettler, Alberta, where, like, I was in Calgary, and Calgary was a bastion of liberal progressivism by comparison to some of these places that some of my choir friends came from. And they're young, gay or bi teens, and they can't talk to anybody about it. And they're in little towns and they can't be who they are. And I think of those guys and the experiences they had. And I think of the teenage boys who are in junior hockey having those experiences, because we know we know they exist.
Yeah.
And much worse experiences, because, you know, choir is not exactly as full of toxic masculinity as even in Alberta in the 80s and 90s. It wasn't as bad. We didn't talk about people being queer, but we also didn't like bully them for it. And so I'm multiplying those experiences and feelings in my head and thinking about these kids and going, like, I don't want that for them. They are children. They are like rookies in the NHL right now are the age of my child. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to say that I didn't understand until I had a child that age, because of course I was a child that age. Like you don't have to have a child that age to experience it. You don't have to have a daughter to know that rape culture is bad, right? Like, that's not what I'm saying, but I feel it in my kishkas because my kid is that age, and she had, you know, she's had some, I'm not going to go into details because she hasn't given me permission, but she has had some experiences with kids from that culture that were not so positive. And she has known, and I have known kids who got out of that, you know, like who could have been in the OHL draft and decided against it because they and their parents did not want them to be in that whole situation.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense too. I mean, I still have those kids from those small towns across the country who come to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I see it, and a lot of them quit sport, and it could be such a good empowerment tool for so many. And
Yeah.
sadly, it's more
It's,
oppressive, especially on the boys and
Yeah.
men's side.
Yeah.
It's becoming an oppressor.
Mhm.
And well, it's always been, and I think it's still stuck in, I don't even think it's at the 80s or 90s. I think it's in the 50s and 60s and 70s, sadly.
Yeah.
And but hopefully we get to the point of pushing it like Stonewall. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Keep pushing and growing this culture and evolving it.
I hate that there are teams and companies and organizations that are, rainbow washing themselves while not doing anything of value, and they're doing it for, the kudos. But because of how old I am, I also feel like, wow, look at how the world has changed. That the thing you do to look good in public is you support queer people. Like, so those two things are constantly pushing and pulling each other in my mind, because like, I don't want people to just rainbow wash themselves. I want them to make meaningful changes. I want them to do meaningful things. And I am, I want to support companies and teams and organizations that do that. That's what I want. But I can't help, being happy about the social change that is indicated by the fact that that the thing you do to look good and not get, slammed on social media is you pretend to support queer people.
And I think that's a lovely start, and I'd be happier with it 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Personally, now I'm at the point where I think even consumers are savvy enough to start recognizing that it's performative.
Yeah.
And if they genuinely want those rainbow dollars, then they should be doing more than just the performative acts, because I think people are going to get tired of them. Well, I have been, and I've been very vocal about that.
It's like land acknowledgements. Those were I'm not going to say groundbreaking. No, I'm not. I'm going to find a less colonized word to say what I mean. Those were a big deal. They were important when they started happening. Now we're all of these years on, and we can't just do land acknowledgements. We have to do something. We have to be putting our money and our votes and our time and our efforts into something that's concretely helpful to First Nations communities.
Get clean water up north. Work on the health and well-being of in Attawapiskat.
Fund education.
They like many of these areas up north don't even have high schools.
I
they
know.
don't have working like soil that can be harvested. There's so many issues that it's like, oh yeah, your land acknowledgement didn't cure that. It's just like a white guilt thing.
It's good that we're doing that. It's good that we're putting it in people's minds, but that has to be the very, very beginning. That's the seed. That's not the plant. That's not the tree. That's the seed. And you can't stop at the seed. You got to make it grow into something.
Completely agree. I think that's great. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head.
That's okay. You were phenomenal, and you said a lot of powerful things, and I think it's gonna
Well, I sure said a lot of things, that's for sure.
No, I think it's going to be great. Sylvia, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.